All right, hello, my name's Ned, and this is the first episode in a series I'd like to call Put Me in Coaching, where I convey my aspirations of wanting to be an esports coach, specifically League of Legends, and also talk about topics that are relevant in the world of coaching. So, first, for this first episode, I'd like to talk about Reapered coming in as the head coach of C9 and what that means for the team and what that means for North America as a whole, and whether I think it's good that Koreans are coming in to be head coaches of North American teams. And I'll start the video off by saying no, I do not think Koreans, especially Reapered, should come in and be the head coach of Cloud9. And to to set the tone of the video, I'd like to have a have a have this game of C9 getting their head kicked in game 3 in their series versus TSM, and then I'll talk about some of the reasons why I don't think Reaper should be the head coach of Cloud9. Now, before you dislike the video and click away and leave an angry comment, I'd like to sort of preface this by saying I do not think bringing in Koreans to the NA scene as a whole is a bad idea. I think bringing them in as head coaches, especially when they speak very little English, as Reaper does, as you can see by Cloud9 Genesis videos where he has to speak through a translator, is a bad idea. Because head coach is a role that requires a specific level of charisma. You have to be able to work on things like uh, the communications in game, and you have to be able to work on team morale, which you need to be able to express things like analogies and metaphors and tone of voice, and you need to be able to convey your ideas in a way where the players can understand them immediately and clearly when you're trying to work with with feelings. You have to, like, as a head coach, you are partially you're partially there to manipulate and manage your players' emotions even. So I think already you need somebody who can speak the language of the players. But let's not get into that just yet. Let's talk about some of the Reaper's background and why some of the positive things and why a team might want a Korean coach to come in. So Reaper in particular, he used to be a professional player in Korea and he had a lot of success. He was a mid laner. He won some tournaments. He did well in the LCK, or I think it was OGN at the time. And um, so already he's going to have insight into the Korean scene because they've been the most successful for what 4 years now. So in that regard, he's great. He's gonna be able to talk about the structure of the Korean scene, and he's gonna be able to talk about some Korean strategies, and he's gonna bring insight that other teams might not have into what the most successful and competitive region in the world is doing. So in that regard, you can understand why you'd want him. Another positive and plus for his position as the head coach is he's a former professional player, which means already he's going to earn respect that other coaches wouldn't from having the knowledge and putting in the countless hours into the game that they've put in, right? So, an example of a team that would benefit from somebody who was a former professional player is Origin. They're infamous for being uncoachable because they believe that they know better than their coaches because they're the players, they're the ones who put in all the time, all the work. They know the matchups, they know the strategy, whatever. They know the builds. So they don't feel like somebody else has anything to offer to their team because they haven't put in the work that they have, which is understandable. So Reaper's not going to have that problem. He's been a professional player. He had success in the most competitive region, and so already that's positive. But for negatives, let's get into what the video is actually about. Not a strategical coach. He's a head coach, which means he's in charge of the things like I mentioned earlier, like team morale and practice environment. So he's got to be able to convey his ideas to the team in an effective way, which clearly is not going to be easy if you have to convey all your ideas through a translator, right? So as you can see in the first episode of C9 Genesis of this season, the first episode of this season, he's not. He'll have moments where he's talking to the players, but he's not really talking to the players. The translator's talking to the players. And I think Reaper in particular does a particularly poor job of this, i.e., not talking to the players, because he's sitting in the. You can watch it. He's sitting in the corner in a swivel chair, where well the translator is actually standing in front of all the players and talking to them. He's not looking at the players when he's talking to them. He's distracted almost. It's almost like he doesn't want to give them the time of day, and I don't think this is intentional by him. I think he's a professional player who's played video games for a living, and he might be a little awkward, and he might not have the charisma of a traditional sports coach, we'll say. So so already I think that's a problem. Like if you're not going to talk directly to the players, then they're not going to respect you. And I think a good example of how to do this correctly, if you want to see it, is if you watch travel channels. And particularly, my favorite is Anthony Bourdain, where he'll go to a restaurant, he'll be talking to the owner of the restaurant, and he'll have a translator. But he's not talking to the translator. He's not looking at over at the translator when he's speaking to the owner of the restaurant. He's looking at the owner of the restaurant, speaking English, mind you. The owner has no idea what he's saying until the translator speaks. But the owner still feels like he's talking to Anthony. He's not. He doesn't feel like he's talking to the translator, and the translator is not going to be offended that you're not looking at them or talking to them. They're there to convey your ideas to the people you want to talk to. They're making money. It's his job. He's not gonna. You don't need to worry about the translator's feelings, right? So I get it. It's more comfortable to talk to the person who speaks your language to confirm whether they understood you and whether they can convey your ideas clearly. But it's important as a head coach to be able to speak to your players and not speak to the translator, right? So I think already that's a problem. Um, Another problem I have is, and now I'm only basing this off of the very little evidence I have from watching the C9 Genesis videos, but uh, it seems like a lot of the advice he's giving the players is really obvious. It's like, of course they should be doing that. Any player that's not in freaking in silver or bronze knows not to do this. So like the example I can think of off the top of my head is when he takes all these players in for their one-on-ones after the first day he comes in and coaches them. He uh he says to Sneaky, "Hey, don't be so greedy for farm. It's getting you killed." So no shit, Sherlock, right? Everybody knows, hey, if you don't know where the enemies are, you can't get that fucking CS, right? Um, and I mean, it's something that it's important to remind your players of sometimes if they do it a lot. Maybe your players aren't too smart; they're just mechanically gifted or whatever. But it's really not something as a head coach that's your job to outline on day one. Like if I was a professional player and somebody came in and they told me that on the first day after the maybe one time I did it. Okay, so maybe I don't know. Maybe Sneaky was doing it all day, but I highly doubt that because I've seen Sneaky play and it doesn't seem like he's that kind of player, right? But if I was a player and the coach came in and said that to me on the first day, I would feel almost like patronized, right? Because of course he knows not to be greedy for farm and get himself killed. He just made a stupid mistake at that point. And I think as you become more acquainted with the players as a head coach, that's the kind of thing that you can sort of get on their case about. It's kind of like if you ever watched Remember the Titans, it's like dropping the football. It's something that's really remedial, really simple, but you need to drill in their head. Don't drop the football, right? So, um, but it's not something that when you bring him in for a one-on-one to say something meaningful to really try to improve his play on the very first day or maybe get to know him on the very first day, it's not something that you want to say. So already there's a problem there. And then throughout the rest of the like conversations, he never really said anything that made me think, "Oh yeah, I never thought about that." And so if I've thought about it already, you have to imagine that the professional players who play the game for a living and play it 10 hours a day have thought about it as well. Um, so so clearly there's a problem there. But like I said earlier, I'm only basing my knowledge of his advice to the players off these Cloud9 Genesis videos. And to be fair, the players did say themselves, they said he was mentioning to them not only what they shouldn't be doing, but things that they weren't doing and should be doing. So maybe at one point in the game, this is they never gave an example, so I'll give one. Maybe at one point in the game, Medios was taking a jungle camp when he should have been going to the top turret and helping his team kill it faster so they could get ahead in the rotations. Things like that. And I think if that is the case, that is important for a coach to do. But again, that's something that would be a strategic coach's job. Or maybe the strategic coach says, "Hey, I noticed that Medios isn't doing this. Could you tell him?" to the head coach, and that way the head coach, who has the charisma, whose job it is to earn the respect of the players, gets to go and convey that idea, because that's really the main problem I have. I don't think that Reaper's an idiot. I think he has good ideas, and I think he would be beneficial for almost any North American team to pick up. But I don't think it's good for them to bring him in as a head coach. And I think that's where I'll leave the video off on. If you want to watch the next one, I think I'm going to do a video on Parth previously coaching TSM, and also this new, well, not necessarily new, but bringing in Weldon, who previously was their sports psychologist, or their esports psychologist, I guess you could say. All right. Thank you, and bye.